but wouldn't be as much of a driver as in the real life experience I am seeing it be right now. So thank you for the opportunity to connect with all of you. And my hope is that inside of this conversation, which I do hope is a conversation, that some component of the work, the research, the experience that I've had over the last few years can be useful as we're all facing this moment of massive disruption and growing uncertainty. So 3.5 years ago now, about 3.5 years ago now, I took everything that I owned, except for what fits into a carry-on suitcase, put it into storage to go and search for answers to the question, how might we empower people in the face of uncertainty and disruption? I had been noticing some trends in the marketplace, the impact of technology on jobs, and how the workforce was shifting, and what might happen when a recession or an economic downturn comes. I've been noticing these things that had me really wondering, on the one hand, certainly it presents a lot of opportunity for all of us. But on the other hand, I'm from Detroit originally, and I live what happens when we don't think creatively about these things. What are we going to do with all the people? So I figured that by pushing my own life to an absolute extreme of uncertainty, traveling around in the suitcase, and by interviewing people who are creating the technologies that are creating the impact, and meeting with people who are masters at managing change, then I could develop some answers to this so that I could help myself and others, companies, answer these questions. Now so I did that for a year. I thought it was actually gonna be a year. It ended up being almost 2. And so now I spend my time working with companies, governments, and individuals to help them translate these challenges that are future focused into results and action today. Now, I was under the operating assumption that it was going to be a confluence of technological events that was going to create a moment similar to what we're seeing right now. And it turns out that, surprise, it was a virus. I was also under the operating assumption that it was going to be 5 to 10 years before we started to see this kind of massive crumbling of structures and shifting in society that we're going to see. And surprise, it happened, and is happening in a very tight timeline. And so now I am feeling very much like, okay, money where your mouth is. If you've come up with these framework strategies and tools to help people thrive in the face of disruption, now's the time to bring them to the forefront. So what are those things? And by the way, be they technological disruption or otherwise, the framework still holds. So the 3 parts. First and foremost, most important, is mindset. And this is distinction between, am I going to be captive to my circumstances, wondering why is this happening? And gosh, I wish it were different. Or am I going to shift into the captain's seat and say, okay, given all of this, what do we want to create? And when I was on my future of work journey, the moment that this became very clear to me, I boarded a plane in Los Angeles, California. I flew 3,000 miles to Miami. I got off the plane, and I only had my carry-on suitcase and a purse. I get up to the rental car counter, and I'm getting ready to get them my license, and I'm not seeing my wallet, so I just start emptying out the bag and figure that my wallet's in there, and I get down to the bottom of the bag, and there's no wallet in the bag. And I had just begun this year-long journey, no money, no credit cards, no wallet, no anything. And I'm sitting there, my stomach sank, I start crying. Like, what am I gonna do? What have I done with my life? This was miserable. But in that moment, I'm like, okay, no amount of crying or wishing or hoping is going to bring that wallet back. So the decision can be to sleep here at the airport until this year is over, or step into the captain's seat and say, given all this, what can I create? Picked up the phone, contacted a friend who lived in Miami. He paid for my cab to get somewhere, lent me money, and helped me to get on my way. So this mindset piece, as we think about it now, is that critical question, or that difference in 2 questions, which is, why is this happening to me? versus given that this is here, what do I want to create? And then underneath that is something that I've learned in the subsequent months from that, which is this distinction between, do we want to be right or do we want to be resilient? And what this speaks to is, do I want to be right about the way that I think that the world works? No, it doesn't work this way for my business. I know how to get a customer. These are the rules of the game. Well, right now, all bets are off. So do I want to be right about what I think I know? Or am I willing to bend and be flexible and be resilient so that I can thrive in the face of what's happening? So that's the mindset piece. There's an education piece here in the middle. And as we think about the future of work, that has to do with things like lifelong learning, polishing up entrepreneurial skills. But as we think about this given moment that we're in right now, the education piece could be, it certainly is for me right now, how do I completely pivot my business in a very truncated amount of time with totally different resources than I thought I would have available? So how do I do that? I got to find other people who have done it before, who know how to do it, who could have resources that I don't have, and educate myself about this. 2 weekends ago, I participated in an online conference to help leaders think about how we're facing these challenges together. And one of the most important things that I learned from that was from a guy who runs a big manufacturing firm. And he was like, now is the time to be decisive. You want to have a good look at your numbers. So in terms of education, looking at your business's numbers, your family budget, whatever this looks like, and be really clear about what needs to be cut now so that you can be empowered and not worry about money that's going out the door. So getting educated about what's happening and the tools that you might need to help yourself thrive in the face of this. And then the third piece is collaboration. And collaboration can be, of course, around a product or a project, collaborating at a market level. How can companies come together to do things inside of organizations with coworkers and colleagues? But really right now, I am finding that collaboration very fundamentally shifts into connection. And at this moment, when people are, I can speak for myself and my experience and from what I'm hearing from other colleagues and collaborators around the world, before we think about growing stuff, there's a moment of shoring up and of re-strengthening and reaffirming. So this connection of simply calling somebody and saying, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? That can be enough to help people just get enough strength to then start to think about, what do we build moving forward? So for the moment, I'll leave it at that. The mindset, education, and collaboration is the three main categories of things that can help us thrive no matter what kind of disruption that we're facing. And then, Eduardo, I guess I'll open it to you for questions or open it up to everybody.
Well, what I would love is, I think that you did a beautiful job of kind of framing and distilling, your, the nuggets of your journey. And, within that, I just love to open it up so that it's a really practical, relevant conversation. I know there's a lot that I've been managing and thinking of my own business in a very transparent way. I didn't want to be in the captain's seat a couple days ago. I was really resisting that. I was like, no, I don't want to, allowing, and I was just on a previous conversation about allowing oneself, grief, what are the cycles of grief that we have, around, what did we imagine this year to look like? When I started, 2020, I was like, first of all, I was also told by all the divine witches in my neighborhood, in my life, that Capricorn, I'm a Capricorn. It's like Capricorns and Saturn, Capricorns, the stars are aligned for the most epic year you've ever had in your entire life, and I guess this is a different type of epic year that I was expecting.
Yeah.
But really getting flat on and really surrendering and letting go of what I thought this year was going to look like, and getting really present to what this year actually is. And not even what this year is, but what this moment is.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that ability to just get into the present has been really useful. Because then what I think is also emerging for me is it's very easy because of the fear and the uncertainty and the anxiety to go immediately into scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm really present to all that's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All that's not coming in. You know, the fact, I don't even know when I'm getting home again. I have no idea when I'm going to get back home. You know, so that can be really like unsettling and unnerving.
Yeah, I know.
And like, there's so much abundance in this moment as well.
Yeah.
Right? So how am I like creating that? And I think that's the whole captain seat. Do I want to be right or do I want to be resilient? You know, like listening for in the present moment, what are the opportunities that are emerging? And how can I speak, one, from the opportunity that's emerging that I see, but two, also like, what is my community calling for? Like, what are people desiring, and speaking into that from a place, I believe, of generosity. Like, how am I, like, in a conversation around giving, not taking, not hoarding, like not like the person at Target who's getting 17 rolls of toilet paper, you know, who like, frankly, like who in New York City has space for that in their apartment anyway, you know, or I'm not gonna fly with, you know, 20 cases of toilet paper, you know, to my next destination, you know, like, so I feel like there is a way in which we're like in dialogue with like profound human need and an opportunity to also to evolve beyond that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So in the decision making between, you know, being the victim to inside of a circumstance and, you know, owning what's happening, being the captain of your destiny, that doesn't mean that you don't feel those other things in the meantime. You know, that's sort of, you know, actually this is, the past was dichotomous relationship, or it's this or it's that. Future, meaning now, is it's a blurring of lines. I am choosing to be a captain of my destiny, and I freaked out last night because, you know, I'm like, oh my God, you know, I let myself fall into the moment of everything was canceled between now and June at least, and like, what am I going to do? So it doesn't mean that you don't have that moment, but it means that rather than allowing yourself to slip into the depths of that, which just is like inaction and hiding under your rug for, you know, the next 3 months or more, it's asking, you know, one of the most important things that I learned from Tony Robbins was, you have to choose, leaders choose the kind of person they need to be. You know, so in this moment, I'll just speak from my own, again, experience. In this moment, I need to be fearless, and I need to, I'm choosing for myself that I need to be in abundance and be ready to show up and give, because, you know, I could wonder what's happening to me, or I could think I've been training for this for the last 5 years. But that doesn't mean that you don't have those feelings of, oh God, what's happening? How am I going to do this? I don't know the answer to everything. I wish it wasn't this way. The year I had planned before was so much better than what I'm experiencing right now in my imagination. But it doesn't mean that those things aren't there. Yeah. But it's that commitment is the decision, right? I learned from somebody else that a commitment isn't a feeling, it's a decision. And so moving across the chasm of the feeling, this is where courage comes in, moving across the chasm of the feeling and saying, I'm going to do this. And the way that I have found to do it, which is reiterating that point that I was making about my great surprise and how important collaboration is in this whole picture, is that my way to get out of my own thinking and my own fear thinking is to get into service of somebody else. Who can I help? And the minute I'm out here in the reality of helping somebody else, then things start to settle into place, I have found.
Yeah. I love the, because I do tend to be a very positive person, you know, and like, and it's like, not every moment has to be like looking for the silver lining. Like,
Yeah.
I can be upset and I can be frustrated and I can be angry. Like, and I think that's, if we allow ourselves to speak about the fear and the anxiety and all that other stuff, I think it gives light to it. And it gives a space, I think, to just feel like, I would say, just feel like a person. I just want to be a person right now. And like, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. There's a lot, I mean, fear for your own health, for those of your family. And I also want to acknowledge that there's also a certain level of privilege that many of us on this call have, right? Like that we do have shelter, you know, that, you know, we may have access to a savings account, you know, that we may have access to medicine, or we have health insurance. And there are people who that's not their reality. And I think that's something for us always to consider, like, that this is an opportunity for also to be mindful that no matter how it is that we feel like we're suffering through whatever our reality is, there is a reality for other people that is different than our reality, and getting related to that. And I think thinking about how we can show up in service of that, I think becomes also an opportunity for us to also take our attention away from what don't I have to what is out there, and how can, and I think that it is in that conversation that we're most connected to our humanity. And I just feel like a person. I just want to feel like a human being right now, specifically when I'm socially isolating and distancing myself. Yeah.
Socially distancing from all the people. Yeah, I mean, you know, and shifting the focus, because I have also found to be true that where you focus your energy, your thinking, is what becomes your reality. Your words create your reality. Your words are also in your thoughts, so that creates your reality. And so if I focus on all the things that are wrong, then everything becomes wrong. If I focus on the things that I'm grateful for, then there's a space for creativity and gratitude and giving. And it really is our own mental creation. And so one of the things that I have been, speaking of practical tools, I have been extremely careful about when I, especially Twitter, but when I look at social media, how much time I allow myself to spend there. And because there is real important information that we need to know to keep ourselves safe. So for that, it's useful. But the minute that we start to go down into the rabbit hole, I mean, I could feel my body getting sick the longer I was spending time in that space. And so now I've just moved it to two specific times of day. So I feel like I have the information I need to equip myself, and then leave it at that and allow for the rest of my day to be in business and in working.
I think that's a really practical tip and tool for people to have, is like to really limit the nosedive through the 24-hour media cycle.
Yeah.
You know, and I think social media, all that stuff, you know, really impacts and gets in the way, because there's also a lot of fake news that frankly is being propagated. I've found Governor Cuomo of New York to be unbelievably useful. He does, so I think that as a source, I mean, as a New Yorker, I know there are a lot of people on this call that are in New York City. I think that his press conferences are really useful, really practical. He said, my commitment is to tell you the truth. And I believe that he's telling me the truth. And he's like, when I have new information, I will share with you that information. But you know, for now, like, just trust that whatever I'm telling you is the truth. And I find unbelievable comfort in that. He's like, where I start building anxiety is when I feel like someone's holding back information.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like, first of all, that's an amazing demonstration of leadership on his part. And so I think it's also, who am I trusting getting information from? There's certain people that the moment they tweet something or speak something has my blood pressure like spike, a certain decibels, and my heart rate goes. So I think maybe tuning those out, I think maybe really useful and practical. And I think really doing the information of like sourcing through like what is the news that you are consuming, I think is really useful. One thing that I want to add, which is it's a practice. I'm going to call it a micro practice, which is a macro practice, which I highly recommend, is in the various ways in which I am in communication with people, is to practice gratitude and acknowledgement. So I was on hold. I had international travel plans. We were flying we had work in Australia. Fran, I was planning on, right now I would have been in Sydney, Fran, but I am currently in Miami Beach. But with Deborah, we were supposed to be in Sydney running one of our international women's programs. And I was on hold for 2 hours with United Airlines, first with the Amex Travel and then United Airlines separately, because they couldn't handle the thing. And then because I purchased it through Amex Travel, and then I had to fly with, then I had to have the conversation with United. And when I got like dealing with being on hold for 2 hours and however I was feeling about that, before I even started the conversation, I said, first of all, I want to acknowledge you for everything that you're doing. I can imagine how stressful this is for you. And I know that you're dealing with people on their worst day and people are annoyed and frustrated. So before we have this conversation, I just want to express my gratitude to you and thank you for everything you're about to do on this call for me. And like, first of all, as I was saying those words, like first I felt myself like connected to my own humanity. Like I would get choked up, I was like, I just want to give voice to being a person right now in this moment. And I did the same thing yesterday in Miami Beach in Trader Joe's. They only allow 25 people in the grocery store at a time. So there's a line of people outside the grocery store trying to get in, and everyone is socially distancing. So like there's like 6 feet between everyone, before they get into the store, so that people are not on top of each other in the grocery store. And again, with the people who have to like wash the hand, like the people who are like literally taking every cart and washing down every cart so that like to limit the contamination, right? And the people who are then doorkeeper, ensuring that adults are coming in one by one, expressing my gratitude to them. Also, just like, it's just a seeing of humanity that I think is really, really important. And I think that's also like, what's the captain seat that I'm choosing to take and how I'm showing up in the world, not just in my business, but how am I choosing to show up in my relationships? How am I choosing to show up within the greater context of clients or just the people in the building that I live in or my neighbors? Like, how are we showing up that also then creates a different association, that's something other than that fear and anxiety, and where we choose to communicate from that context.
Yeah, absolutely. That choice of being a protagonist of your own life cascades out to everything, although not necessarily 100% true, the way that you show up in one place is how you show up in the other places. And so, paying attention to the kind of person that you want to be, because you can choose. Like that's the thing. There's a choice in the being of how we show up, even when we're scared and frustrated and angry and whatever we are feeling. Right? There's still a choice in that, and that's where I find the magic is. There's a lot of potential in making that choice.
I want to open it up. I know Kristen, you're a real estate agent. Steph, I know you have a full-time job, at Macy's, but then you also are a graphic designer, and we have various side hustles. Some people are launching parallel careers and businesses. Some people have multiple streams of income. And I just wanted to, Linda, I know that you're a consultant. Deb, I know that you not only work for Fearless Communicators, and, your whole schedule also just shifted and evolved. And there are other things that you do. What is emerging for you, or what are some questions? Also listening to Elatia and what she's been speaking about, I think there's an opportunity to also like use this as an opportunity to just be in communication and give voice, and also like maybe collectively brainstorm together and see what are some opportunities that may be emerging. So I just wanted to open that space. If you feel like you can't communicate and you feel much more comfortable typing in the chat box, please feel free to do so. You can also message me privately. I know sometimes there are people who are more introverted than extroverted and don't feel, comfortable sharing publicly. Do you know what I mean? If you want to message me privately, you can do that, or put it in the chat box. We'll make sure to give voice to that. Kristen, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting just hearing all of this, because a lot's been coming up for me, and I've been wanting to do a video and share a little bit on this, but like I've been like in this like weird space of like just like grounding myself to see what I'm feeling before I project and like step on anyone's toes or hurt anyone's feelings, because I do have kindness, compassion, and it's an interesting market. But 2 years ago, when I was quitting my corporate job to go into real estate, like this was my biggest fear, right? And it's so funny that fast forward 2 years later, this happened. And 2 years ago, I probably would have freaked out and got another job or looked for another job. And my sister's like, you're not even like phased by it. I said, no, like I'm in abundance. Like I know like this is just for the greater good, because, if you always do right by people or come from a place of compassion or giving or contribution, like it's always going to come back to you one way or another. Business has now stopped because they put all new rules in place in New York, but we're trying to find ways to be creative and different. Like I have some clients that are amazing and working with us. Like I just posted a listing on Monday. We showed it Friday, and she's like, listen, if you need me to like do FaceTime or Zoom talk calls, if people want to see my house, I'll collaborate with you girls and do it, which is amazing. I have buyers, and she actually needs to buy after she sells. She's like, I'm going to go drive by some houses, see if I like the blocks in the neighborhoods, which we told her to do. And then I said, we'll collaborate with other agents and see if they'll coordinate with the sellers to do a virtual tour for you. Not all cases are that way. The problems coming in now is like, okay, we could do that. We could put offers in that way if people are comfortable doing it, but then inspectors can't do an inspection before the contracts get signed, so there's these hurdles that we're like really navigating through. So I'm not afraid of it. A lot of agents are freaking out, I think. And I have 2 accepted offers from buyers that didn't even back out and didn't sign the contracts yet. They did inspections and everything, but it's just about how you speak to people and coach them. If you stay grounded and you say, that's why like I haven't been quick to like put any videos or messages out, because I'm like, I need to really wrap how I'm feeling before I could just push my emotions out, So that's been interesting. Obviously, a lot of my events that I was supposed to do, I was nominated as Power Woman of New York. That got pushed to September, which is fine. There's positives of everything. Not everyone was able to attend the April event anyway that I wanted to be there. So like now we have more notice. So, I try to look at the bright of every situation. But I also am like looking at it from a different light, because I listened to one of Patricia's replays this morning, and she wants us all to be out there teaching. And that's something I want to get done and start doing as well in Cincinnati. It's just, I'm trying to play catch up and get everything in place for my business to run. And then I could do that. But she was saying how this is only week 2 in New York. And, once it gets to week 3, week 4, which would happen in Italy, like it hit people even harder, right? Because week 1, we're all in chaos trying to figure out where are we going, what are we doing, how do we get back in order. Week 2 is like, okay, we're finally getting into our new norm. It's like we're figuring it out, but not really. And then like week 3 is when we need the connection. We need to speak to people. We're starting to get lonely and miss people. Like I live by myself. I'm not with my nephews. I'm not with my parents. Like I'm dropping them food off on their stoop and running. Like, I don't want to get them sick. And I'm like, spray it with Lysol before I like leave it there for like 2 hours, spray it with Lysol, be careful. Not that I want to install fear, but like, I know if they get sick, I can't go to the hospital and even visit them.
Yeah.
So, it's just a lot. I try to be as positive. I've been doing healing meditation on Peloton app. It's free for 3 months. If anyone, there's meditation, there's yoga, they stream all these different workouts. You don't need the bike, But they had this healing meditation. I've been listening to it every morning because it's just like calmed me down. Because 2 or 3 days ago, I had a cough, and it was like a terrible cough that I was like, oh shit, I got this. Like, and today my cough is gone, like gone. And my sister's like, wait, it's gone? I'm like, it's gone. I loaded on the healing meditation, drink warm fluids. I mean, I'm not really leaving my house. I haven't been in the last few days, but you know, everything's a mindset.
Yeah.
And, you know, so that's like my perspective on a lot of this.
Something Elatia and Kristen, you know, and, you know, again, this is an open space to share, but one of the things that I noticed for myself was where that there is a certain amount, like a certain medicine that the coronavirus is giving us all is stillness, you know, and slowing down. Like everything is like kind of slowing down in stillness. And I was tracking for myself where I immediately felt like I needed to get into doing and going and performing to get ahead of it, to beat it, you know. And I feel like there's all these tapes around, like, you know, you got to crush it. You got to get on top of it. You got to win it. You got to beat it. You got to get on top. If you don't get on top, you're going to drown. You know, and this like hyper energy. And I was, and meanwhile, like my internal instinct was like, no, like it's already here. Like, it's like the flood has happened. Like it is, we are all under the water.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a way in which it's like not resisting what it is, but flowing into what is emerging is where I'm finding my footing, right?
Yeah.
And because that in the flow, there's flotation, right? And in the resistance is like it feels like drowning, you know? And that, and really tracking, what am I doing to do? Because ultimately what I'm resisting is being still, and resisting the opportunity. Like one of the things that I think we're always complaining for and wanting is time. And guess what we just got a whole hell of a lot of?
Yeah.
Time. And people are like, what I want is more time with my children. Guess what they're getting? More time with their children. What people want is more time with their spouse. Guess what they got? A lot of time with their spouse, you know? So there are these ways in which, like, there is an opportunity to also just like, what is this opportunity presenting me, and what can emerge from this? And it's so interesting. The quote that you know, I was when I was sharing this information about this event, the quote that emerged was it was something about uncertainty. I'm going to butcher it, but something uncertainty, that the chapters that are framed in our life story aren't titled until after.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a butchering of the quote, but like, you know, but basically there's uncertainty, and there is something in the chapter of our lives that we will recount the story of this chapter. Right. Yeah. We will tell our children, and we will tell, you know, our, you know, nieces and nephews, you know, who are now 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, about what happened when the world stopped because of this virus. Yeah. Right? And who we were in that moment. And I think there's a real curiosity for me is like, what is this chapter title going to be? You know, what is the story that I'm going to tell about this chapter? Like how did I emerge in this chapter? What was the lesson here? Like what is the lesson of the parable that would be the story of this? Right?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest learned lessons that I had during this journey of, you know, really pushing my life to this uncertainty was a lesson about the kind of energies that there are in the world, which speaks exactly to this dynamic that you're talking about, like this push, gotta do. And because, by the way, choosing to be a captain doesn't necessarily mean the push, gotta do. It's a centered mindset about creating. But I used to think, I had the erroneous impression that there were two kinds of energies in the world. One kind of energy is a declaring energy. I will do this thing. We will create this. This will happen. My business will grow. My bank account will do this. A declaring energy. And then there was a doing energy. I do all the things and the stuff in order to make that happen, and I do the activities, and I make my checklist, and I color code it all, and here we are. And it turns out, you know, when I was, this is probably one of the lowest points, if not the lowest point in this journey. Like my cash was running out. I had been selling, you know, products and coaching and stuff on the phone, and nobody was buying. And my back was really against the wall, and I was negotiating a contract that would have been big enough to bank 4 or 5 months, if not more. And I would have had the breathing room to go. And so I was all excited. And then in the 11th hour, it fell through. And so here I am, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm at the limit of what my brain can take, what my heart can take. My anxiety is through the roof. I had no idea where the next money was coming from. And here I am, like on my knees in my friend's apartment in Los Angeles. And I'm like, you know, having this conversation with my creator about, but you told me to go on this journey, and here I am, and this is the worst thing that has ever happened in my life, and why? And then I got that there's a third kind of energy, which is just as important, but very much more subtle than the other two, which is a receiving energy. And sometimes after the doing and after the declaring, the only thing to do is to wait. And what we think we're waiting for might not be the thing that we get, but we will get the thing that we need. And as I hear you talk about the need to go and do and push and the things and the stuff, because I also feel that, you know, if I can just get out in front of this, it'll all be okay.
Yeah.
And then being reminded of that there's a receiving here and the abundance is here. You know, I live in a place that has a lot of migratory birds fly through it. And so one of the things that helps me stay centered in the face of all of this stuff is when I watch them fly by. And they don't need anything. You know, at the moment that they're hungry, they look for food and they find it, and then it's done. But there is not this worry in their brains about the kinds of things that we are worried about. So I would offer that as, you know, as a way of thinking about this stuff, and an allowing and an opening for the quiet and the silence to come and be here with us.
You know, I've been resisting an inner meditation practice, you know, and I've been joking around. One of the things that I had committed to doing this year was a 10-day Vipassana sit in silence, which is my worst nightmare, you know. And I think I may have just gotten the dose of the sitting and the stillness and the quiet, you know, because of this. You know, I love what you were talking about with the receiving, you know, energy. That I think that there is, there's been the doing and the creating, and at the same time this is a receiving. Like I think there's an interesting curiosity as to what is this receiving. You know, like I wanted time and now I got it. You know, I wanted space and now I got it. You know, I live in a 4-bedroom in Brooklyn with roommates, and I now have a 2-bedroom by myself in Miami Beach, like facing the water. You know what I mean?
The ocean and all things. So here's also though, like in terms of additional practical tools, all of these are that we've been talking about, save the Twitter piece. Well, even that's all linked to mindset. And I've always said throughout this journey and everything else, if you can get the mindset piece handled, or if you can focus your time and energy there, all the rest will come. All the rest will come, because the rest is just strategies and tactics and the how, right? But if you can get the mindset piece in this, and one of the other things that I've been, with myself, like, joking, okay, whoever asked for a spicier life, this year, like, surprise,
You got it.
you got it. It just didn't happen the way you thought it would.
Yeah.
Like, you got exactly what you were asking for: time at home, time to breathe, time to create more, time to, do all of the things and the stuff. It just didn't happen in the way that you wanted it, and the time that you wanted it, in the way that felt comfortable for you.
And Elatia, one thing that I would love for you to just touch on quickly is, like, I know that there are people here. One other thing that you talk about is education, right? So I think that in this emerging world, like, the educational systems that supported the creation of how we learn, which are all industrial in context, become irrelevant as the world becomes more digital. And I think that there are tons of opportunities now for us to learn the things that we've always wanted to learn, right? So, and it doesn't have to necessarily look like I'm going to buy into some coaching program for $17,997 that I have to make 17 payments for because somebody's being really generous right now with their coaching, right? But, like, and that's my shade to the whole coaching landscape. And I think that there's apprenticeship and there's virtual apprenticeship. And I think that who are the people that you want to learn from, and I feel like so many people are in this space of generosity and giving. Like, what do you see emerging? What are some spaces and tools that people can use to really, like now they have time to watercolor, or, write,
Well,
or yeah.
Well, this is, this is such a beautiful time that we live in, really, because, here we are in our homes, most of us, those of us who are fortunate enough to have homes to be in, and most of us have the internet, and, there are the world's best museums are offering virtual tours online for free, open and accessible. Masterclass, not ClassPass, that's in person, but all of these online universities are offering free access to all of the courses for the next 2 months, 3 months. Business tools that you were afraid to invest in because you didn't know if it would be worth it. Many of them are offering the next 3 months of licensing for free, so you can utilize it and see if it works for you. So there are all of these tools just available there for you. One of the things that I have decided to do is I'm redoing The Artist's Way, the Julia Cameron book, which is all about recovering your creativity. And, if you're feeling industrious and entrepreneurial about the thing, because really the disruption thanks to the virus is creating a series of economic and labor market shifts that it would be good for all of us to be prepared for, in terms of, like, strengthening our own self. And the first is, even if you're working for a company that's more traditional, understanding the tools of entrepreneurship, and in particular, how to do more with less, understanding how cash flow works, and understanding your messaging and marketing. Those are 3 things that can be incredibly useful. And then finally, inside of this piece, ensuring yourself up for, as time unfolds, really having a look at information that's freely available. What industries are in ascension and what industries are in decline. What jobs are most likely to be computerized in the upcoming 5 or 10 years, so that we don't inadvertently get ourselves trained up and invested in one kind of a job that's going to be going away. And then finally, really looking at learning and education. What I say in my talks now is that we've moved away from a world of diploma and done and into a world of lifelong learning. And so understanding that no matter how experienced you are, no matter how senior you are, no matter how long you've been, how many times you've been around the block, there's a learning and a relearning and a learning of new things that we're all being invited to do, which will also help us practice the resilience and stretch our neurons to help us thrive in the face of greater uncertainty.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Elatia. I think that's a beautiful landing of our proverbial plane, you know, as we look to wrap up this conversation. So I just want to share, we are, this is recorded, so if this was of value to you, we'll also share it widely, just to be in this conversation around thriving in the face of uncertainty. You know, I love the distinctions that you made, you know, around being in the captain's seat, you know, being resilient, you know, the mindset piece, the education piece of it as well that we talked to. And then I think this is a perfect example of the collaboration, which is like, where am I creating collaboration as opposed to not, I mean, yes, there's competition, and I can also be in a space of collaboration. You know, there are 8 billion people on the planet plus, you know, how can we collectively align, you know, to be in service of people and just show up and partner and create from that space. I think that this is something that we're all in together. I think that the way that this is the fact that we have people on the call from Israel and Australia, you know, that we have people literally, this is impacting us globally, that where we can create the connecting points to have us all collectively float, then it becomes a fleet of floating people on the planet. A fleet of floating people in flow, yes, living on the planet. I'm a sucker for alliteration. And I just wanted to share, Elatia, so Elatia, the best way for people to get in communication with you is via LinkedIn. Yeah. So you can reach out to Elatia on LinkedIn. That's one way to connect with her. She has a website that is emerging, www.elatiaabate.com. Elatia is also a private client of Fearless Communicators. We've been working with her over the course of the past 3 years in the various ways that she's shown up around her own thought leadership. I shared in the email a link to the TEDx talk that we worked with together. So that's a way that you can start getting related to her and her own thought leadership. And, you know, on the Fearless Communicators side, one of the things that we're going to be doing now is every Tuesday and Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be hosting a Fearless Chat. It is featuring our, you know, clients, the alumni from our programs, some of whom, again, are on this call around whatever thought leadership they have. This Thursday, we have Jessica Robinson. She runs PurePoint International, which is a cybersecurity company. She talks about cybersecurity as love. So she has a feminine conversation around security and cybersecurity, and specifically, how do we deal with security and cybersecurity in this world of the coronavirus and COVID-19? So check out, there's going to be a beautiful conversation around that. And then we have an unfolding conversation around, you know, how do you sell in this landscape? Like, what is this conversation around selling when no one's buying? You know, so what does it look like to have conversations around sales? You know, how do you have a healthy conversation with that with yourself? Like, how are you being attuned to the moment as opposed to like leading and jittering from your own scarcity? Also, how is this as a time to lean into like, what's really our fire? How can we spark our own creativity and then create an action around that? Right? So again, using and leaning on, you know, the beautiful wealth of knowledge in our community, creating spaces to showcase that. So if you feel inspired or a member of the community and want to lead those conversations, Deborah Driscoll, right over here in this box, is the person to reach out to and connect with that. Open to partnership and collaboration and creation. I had a beautiful call today with Jen T. Grace, who's launched, she's a client of ours, Fearless Communicators, was in the Fearless Force program. She's leading a 30-day challenge for people to write 1,100 words a day so they can write their book. You know, people who've always wanted to write their book. So she's running that currently right now. You know, also in that conversation is a woman named Jennifer Brown, who leads in the diversity and inclusion landscape. And one of the things she really talked about, how in this landscape are we also leaning on our own allyship? So what rooms do we have the privilege to be in, and how are we being a bridge and an anchor for people who may not have access to that opportunity, to bridge them, to bring them into those conversations is, I think, really important. How do we think beyond traditional conversations of race, gender, sexual orientation, but also thinking about age, thinking of differing ability, right? Like, what are the ways in which we're being responsible and socially aware of all the people in our community as we become socially distant, you know, as a necessity? How are we creating space for people to also have access to the opportunities that we have in our various communities? So that is why we are opening this room. So this is not a limited conversation. There's an open invitation for you to always bring people into this who you feel would value from this. And with that, I would just love for people just to give voice as we close, something of value, something they took away from this conversation that will serve them going forward. So, you know, we're just going to go around and share. So, Deborah, we'll start with you.
For me, it was the education. So what do I want to learn, but also what could I teach?
Yeah, it's beautiful. How about you, Kristen Scanlon?
For me, it's just being okay with pausing, right? Because I'm always go, go, go. And like you said, not listening to the noise of everyone else, like, and everything that's going on. Because in real estate, everyone's like, I'm the best and I'm going to do, like, I don't care anymore. I'll do it when I need to do it.
Beautiful. Yes. How about you, Stephanie Houle?
So for me, a big thing was the receiving thing, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because we so often are about doing and being in action. And I think some of us that are entrepreneurs or that are really independent, most of our lives we're used to functioning in that space of doing. But to really kind of trust that we put our effort out and we can like just relax and just be and receive and actually rely on something beyond ourselves to kind of orchestrate around us and come back versus just always trying to take it all on ourselves or it's all up to us. And it really shows that we're in relationship to a universe around us of people, and it's amazing. So I'm really leaning into the receiving end of the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Val, I know that you're having some mic issues, so if you want to type what it is that you have, I'll make sure to add that. Linda Reed, it's so lovely to see you. What are you getting from this conversation?
I'm reminded actually to reach out and to connect, because I can get very hermity.
Yes.
And have been getting very hermity. It's like, oh, okay. And pretty soon I'll be like in a spider web of my own making, a cocoon that I don't want to be in by myself.
Yeah.
So it's reaching out and being intentional. I liked what you said about the commitment, you know, to action. Really, that it's the commitment to action, and I need to hear that and remember that I can create the. We did have a wine party with friends virtually on Zoom. So more of that and just reaching out and staying connected.
Awesome.
During the.
How about you, Oren? Are you able to share?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest thing for me was to focus on the mindset, and that all the rest will follow.
I love that. Thank you so much, Oren. And how about you, Abby? What would you like to share?
This has been an incredible moment where I see how many communities I'm a part of. And yet I also see, wow, I haven't been making a lot of hard choices or prioritizing. I've been doing all the things. And I see that this is an invitation to really look at that, because I see all of my different commitments, all the webinars, all the breathing, all of the potential things I could be doing. And it's so abundant. But I think you can also, I will speak for myself, I've been experiencing the paradox of choice. So this is really a moment to also step into making hard choices, prioritizing, reevaluating. And that's hard for me, but I'm going to try to work and grow into it.
Beautiful. And Oren and Abby, I don't know if it's possible for you to show your faces quickly. I just want to do a screenshot. If not, I can also do it with the pictures. Hi. Okay, so we're just going to take a very quick picture. It's so great to see all of your faces. 1, 2, 3. And, you know, I just want to acknowledge that I have a personal connection to each and every one of you, you know, and in this time of distancing, I don't know when I'm going to see you in person again. And for this virtual opportunity, I am just so grateful to see your faces, to see you smiling, and to be witnessing here with you. I hope to see you next Thursday and on future Tuesdays and Thursdays. Elatia, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Lots of love to you. We always as we always end on our Fearless at Fours, to remember to fear less and speak free and love more. And the last thing that I'm going to share is that I do now on Fridays at 4 p.m. at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eduardo's Big Gay Sing-Along. And it's virtual. And what we do is Elatia was at the last one. What we do is we dance through and we move through like all the songs that we embarrassingly know all the lyrics to. Everything from Disney to Broadway to Journey to New York. We had a virtual kick line of people doing New York, New York. And it was so like over the top and insane. And
I highly recommend, highly recommend it.
So if that is something that you feel compelled to and inspired to join in on, that you'll also receive invitations to that. Okay, thank you all so much. Mwah.
Love you. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.